wholeheartedly agree. I'm now going to turn it over to Commissioner Brim Edwards for opening comments on the first item, as she co-sponsored this economic landscape analysis report with my office. So turn it over to you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair, and I appreciate your co-sponsoring this budget modification last year. I want to begin by extending my appreciation to members of the Economic Development Advisory Group, as well as local business and academic leaders who shared their insights and who were willing to partner with us as we develop and implement strategies to support a goal I think we all share, which is an economically thriving Multnomah County. Your expertise, experiences, and actions you're taking to revitalize our community and region are exactly what we need at this moment. I also want to thank Garrett Pryor in the chair's office and Brian Hockaday in my office for your leadership on this project. We know that we're facing real economic headwinds. You can pick a statistic, whether it's the high number of skilled electricians or iron workers who are idle because of a lack of construction projects in the region, or the 6% reduction in the traded sector employment. The statistics tell us that Multnomah County is lagging economically. I was surprised when I got to the county that everyone told me that economic development and creating a positive climate for local employers was, quote, the city's job, not the county's, because as everyone related, back in the 1970s, a Resolution A was adopted by both the county and the city that divided up the responsibilities and gave economic issues to the city of Portland. Never mind the other cities in the county, or that that was more than 50 years ago. So it's definitely time for an update, and I'm glad and I really appreciate the chair's partnership in sort of moving forward with looking at what's the county's role and how can we support a thriving Multnomah County. I also hear on a regular basis that concerns about livability and safety raise the issue of whether Portland's a place where employees would want to live, work, and raise their family. And many local employers have many of the same concerns about operating a business in the region. So historically, cities and other partners in the downtown core and central city have driven economic development issues. Meanwhile, the county's focused primarily on delivering social and safety net services. Those services are essential and core to the county's work, and but we should also recognize that our ability to provide them is directly tied to having a tax base that sustains them, and for that you need a thriving local economy. If we want to fund homeless services, behavioral health care, public health, community safety, we need to have a strong and growing economic base. And we know from our recent presentations from the county economists that that is not currently the case. The goal of this economic development landscape analysis is pretty straightforward. Identify places the county should take an active role in recruiting and retaining local businesses and by creating a safe and livable community. Identifying ways Multnomah County can drive economic activity through capital projects, for example, the library renovations or the earthquake-ready Burnside Bridge. It's also identifying initiatives of the cities that are in Multnomah County, initiatives of the Alvina Vision Trust, local business and labor groups, the port, and others, initiatives that the county can support as a partner. And I want to be clear that I'm interested in driving and supporting economic activity that results in family wage jobs and benefits so that people and families can afford to live, not just work in Multnomah County, but afford to live and thrive in the county. A recent example of this is the AFL-CIO and partners recently launched the Climate Jobs Oregon Initiative, and the report outlines strategies for growing high-quality union jobs while accelerating Oregon's transition to a cleaner economy. As part of this work, I'm looking forward to identifying our competitive advantages that we have here as a region, and we have many. And those competitive advantages are ones that can support economic growth, whether it's in manufacturing, construction, jobs related to the footwear and apparel industry, or the global epicenter of women's sports, innovations that are happening in cancer care and treatment, and also our local food scene. So once we identify those competitive advantages, how do we accelerate those in Multnomah County? So as we're developing a countywide strategy, I'm looking forward to the fellow commissioners and the broader community providing ideas, partnership, and support as we move ahead. We appreciate already that other commission offices have shared initial thoughts and ideas, and looking forward to the discussion today. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the two drivers of this initiative to date, Brian and Garrett.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chair and County Commission. My name is Brian Hockaday. I am the Chief of Staff for Commissioner Julia Brehm Edwards. We have a lot to get into, so I'll hand it over to Garrett.
Definitely. Thank you, Brian. My teammate on this, Garrett Pryor, he, him pronouns. I'm the Chair Senior Policy Advisor on Infrastructure and Development. So as you walk through Commissioner Brehm Edwards in your opening comments, there's a lot to go through here. This is a complex question to figure out what is economic development, what does it mean to people. So let's go to the next slide. So the purpose of today is to walk through a three-part presentation. One, we'll soon turn it over to our consultant team, who took a national landscape look at other cities and different roles that are there. They have some draft findings that we're looking to get feedback upon. Brian and I are then going to walk through what's the county role today. And I think it was surprising to me a little bit to see we do have our tentacles and play a role in a lot of the workforce and economy. And we have just a brilliant panel of speakers from Better Portland, from the Port of Portland and City of Gresham to talk through the different roles and their view on this as well. And then we'll turn it back over to you. So it's about 25 minutes or so of presentation coming up. But we have this presentation here today as far as next steps. We'll then work on receiving and finalizing this report, and that'll lead to ongoing board discussion and engagement with you all and partners here in the community. Next slide. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Becca Burton, who I believe is online from BCT Partners, who was kind of a PM on the consultant side on the project.
I will actually kick us off. I'm Abby Alfred from BCT Partners. So just to quickly introduce ourselves, we were a partnership, BCT Partners and Engine, New Growth Innovation Network. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So BCT Partners is a national management consulting firm that specializes in data-driven strategy evaluation and analytics for government, nonprofit, and philanthropic clients. For this engagement, BCT led the quantitative benchmarking and comparative analysis, partnering with New Growth Innovation Network, who led the stakeholder engagement and qualitative research. I'm going to quickly have Yasmina, the CEO from Engine, introduce herself, and then turn it over to Becca.
Good day to all of you. Thank you so much, the Multnomah County and Commissioners, for engaging us on this wonderful project. My name is Yasmina McCarty. I have the pleasure of being the CEO and President of New Growth Innovation Network, or Engine. And I'll pass it to Becca.
Hello, all. My name is Becca Burton, and I was super excited to get to work on this project. I am an inclusive economic development advisor for New Growth Innovation Network, and really excited to share what we learned from those in your area today. So if we can go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So we wanted to start out with sharing who we heard from. So I wanted to state that the goal of this project for us within the qualitative portion of the report was to surface patterns that clarify where the ecosystem is currently working well, where it is strained, and what role the county is best positioned to play going forward, according to stakeholders involved with delivering the economic development impact in the county. And so who we heard from one nonprofit, 3 chambers, 8 city and county leaders, and 5 large businesses. So those were businesses of 600 plus employees, and then also 7 advisory committee members. So thank you to all of you advisory table members who participated and provided your feedback. And those are the groups that we have divided our information from throughout this process. Next slide, please. So I want to talk about what we heard, and first kick it off with the common ground. And these are areas of commonality that we found across all stakeholder groups. And really saw that this didn't come up 1 or 2 times within our different interviews. We conducted a total of 17 interviews overall, and then additionally the 7 interviews with the stakeholders, or with the advisory committee members, and these were those points of commonality. So the first was that values alignment is real. There is a broad agreement that Multnomah County should be a place where people can thrive, where housing, childcare, safety, education, and opportunity reinforce one another and support a resilient local economy. And this shared values base is a genuine asset, and it's definitely something that you guys already have in place. The second that we came to find was that livability is viewed as economic development. Stakeholders consistently connected housing affordability, childcare access, public safety, education quality, and behavioral health directly to whether or not people can participate in the workforce, whether the businesses can retain talent, and whether families choose to stay close by. This was not an aspiration. It was described as a real operational reality. And the third thing that we heard was that the system is fragmented, not broken. So there's a broad consensus that the ecosystem has density, institutional capacity, and committed actors. So there was not really a concern across the board on a lack of effort, but a lack of coherence. Meaning some unclear roles, no really shared economic development plan across the different types of stakeholder groups, and then no widely agreed upon success metrics. That said, it wasn't that great work wasn't being done. It's that they all agreed across all stakeholder groups and types that there was amazing work being done in the community. They just needed to see where the success metrics lie. And then finally, stakeholders really wanted focus, not new programs. So across all types, businesses, community organizations, and public leaders, there was a consistent call for clarity, define success metrics, and follow through rather than additional initiatives layered on top of existing ones. Next slide, please. So we heard just now those common ground points, those values, livability, the system is fragmented but not broken, and focus, no new programs. So here's where we heard a few different points of difference. Everyone agreed, all 4 of these groups agreed on those common ground points. And here's where we heard the points of differences. Businesses acknowledged that there was operational friction. So some of the challenges that came up for businesses within the economic development space was this operational friction. And by that, they meant permitting timelines, tax compliance burden, and downstream impacts of public safety. So for example, one of our business stakeholders stated, for advanced manufacturing needs, they ask, where do we invest our money and where do we save? Do we invest in human capital or physical capital? Can we save money in regulation, taxes, speed of doing business, and permitting partners? Those were some of the pieces that were really noted that businesses are looking at. And as far as speaking to the permitting timelines, one thing that came up was that during different expansion processes or different things that they have completed, the permitting timeline sometimes seems to move. And so this is where they would like just some clarification on if a permit is going to take 1.5 years, let it take 1.5 years. Another point that we heard from our public leaders, and that includes everyone from the different city economic development departments, the county economic development departments, and the commissioners, was that there's a countywide economic development plan and a need for that. Also with coordinating with authority and advocacy at the regional and state levels. What they would love to see the county do is be that convener in those spaces, because a lot of times businesses will come to them as public leaders, but they might not be the right one that can make those decisions. And our community-based organizations, one big point that they brought up was that there were operational barriers to equity, such as language support, skills training, and wraparound services before job placement. So, one quote that a community based organization said was, "For those needing employment assistance, not everybody has job ready skills. And most funding guidelines are made based on the number of people put into jobs in a year, but many community members need more training and technical skills training before they can be placed in a job." And then finally, when we spoke with the Chambers of Commerce, they shared the same as the business perspective in noting permitting timelines, tax compliance, and the downstream impacts of public safety. But they also advocated for some communication on measurable ROI, demonstrate a visible progress, and the gap between policy intent and visible conditions. So, for an example, they were wondering, one of the chamber stakeholders mentioned, for the taxes that we are paying, are we getting a commensurate level of service to have a thriving community? And by saying that gap between policy intent and visible conditions, the point that they were bringing up was that that you guys have a really good plan in place with the preschool for all and with some of the tax lottery or the video lottery dollars, but making the connection of here's where the county is spending money and here's how it is increasing the county and the benefits to living and working within the community. Next slide, please.
So the themes you just heard from Becca are themes from stakeholders, the fragmentation, unclear roles, connection between livability and economic competitiveness. And these were all really experiential. So we wanted to understand whether the data supports what people are describing and experiencing, and whether there are places that are doing this differently that Multnomah can learn from. So we conducted 2 sets of benchmarking comparisons, one against your neighboring communities, neighboring counties who share the same labor market, and one against peer counties nationally that are outperforming Multnomah in traded sector job growth. So we'll start here with the regional context, comparing Multnomah to surrounding counties to understand what makes Multnomah's starting position unique, because it directly shapes what role the county can and should play. So on the left, you see a comparison with your neighboring counties, where Multnomah has, this is related to the built environment. So Multnomah has 11,800 residents in unincorporated areas, whereas Clackamas has 215,000, Clark 245,000, and Washington County having 270,000. And when it comes to industrial land outside city limits, Multnomah has essentially none, while your neighbors each have hundreds or thousands of acres. So this really matters because it means the county can't pursue the kind of land-based development strategies like site readiness, zoning, and industrial recruitment that are available to your neighboring counties. So this structural reality should define the lane the county operates in, with your advantages being in coordination, workforce alignment, and enabling the livability conditions that make economic development possible. So then on the right, we have a tax comparison. So you see really the key number here being that 4.6% local business tax. So where Washington and Clackamas don't have one, a business can relocate 20 minutes away and stay in the same labor market, keep the same employees, and eliminate the tax entirely. And then if they cross the river to Clark County, they enter a state with no personal income tax either. So really what we're seeing in the data is that this is a regional competitiveness challenge. So it really requires a regional conversation about the cumulative burden and how to address it together. So let's move to the next slide. So we just talked about the regional picture, the county's built environment, limiting what it can do directly, and the tax differential sharing the regional challenge. So the next question we asked was, among counties that are actually growing their traded sector employment, what role does their county government play? So that is really what this national benchmarking was designed to answer. So we see on this slide what we found when we benchmarked Multnomah against peer counties nationally. So we selected 6 counties for deeper analysis. We started with more, and these are the ones we really went deeper with. So the top 4 you see in the green boxes are leading in traded sector job growth, and the 2 beneath them are more structurally similar to Multnomah. So we wanted to learn from all 6 of these. So you see at the top, and as Commissioner Brim Edwards mentioned at the beginning, Multnomah's traded sector employment has declined. And it was the steepest decline we saw across all the peer counties. When we were looking at this comparison, we were really particularly focusing on tech, manufacturing, logistics, and headquarters operations. That's also partially how we chose many of these counties. And so again, we saw this decline in Multnomah. But when we look at the counties below that, we see there were these 4 counties that were growing in these areas. So these really tell us what is possible. So we saw Austin grew its traded sector by nearly 23%, Denver by 25%, Charlotte 14%, and Raleigh 9%. Underneath that, we see when we look at the structural comparators, looking at San Diego, we chose to look at San Diego because they really share a visitor-dependent economy similar to yours and a complex tax environment. So this was the closest like apples to apples kind of comparison. In Minneapolis was interesting because it's the only peer where the county government has a dedicated economic development department with workforce and economic development housed together. That county actually showed a slight decline, but showed that their strategy seems to at least be effective for retention. So when we looked at all 6 of these counties combined, we saw 3 patterns that really stood out. So the first is counties playing a direct role. We saw it in 5 of the 6 counties that we looked at. County government directly administers economic development programs, serves as a convener, or provides significant funding. So that stood in contrast to Multnomah, where the county's role is currently much more indirect. Second, economic development and workforce are institutionally connected. So in most of these counties, workforce functions sit right alongside economic development. So they were coordinated through the same office or through some kind of formal mechanisms, whereas in Multnomah, they remain structurally separate. And third, the public agency sets direction while nonprofits were executing. So we saw in all of these counties that the county was maintaining strategic oversight and coordination authority, and nonprofits were delivering services on the ground. So the county's role was really to set the strategy, set the table, and not to run programs. So what does this all mean for Multnomah? We used the comparative analysis, both the local and the national, as well as what we heard from stakeholders, to develop some recommendations. What we heard really set to a clear set of roles that we think the county is best positioned to play. So I'll turn it back to Becca. Can we go to the next slide, please?
All right. So I don't know how large your screen is, and there's a lot of text on this, but I'm going to share the 3 pillars that we recommend for the county's role. And we recommend a role-based model that reframes economic development as an extension of the county's core mission. The county's comparative advantage is in coordination, workforce alignment, and in enabling conditions. So the first is stabilization. So the county's core social services investments are economic development infrastructure. And that was something that we heard from a lot of the stakeholders within their interviews, was that they were seeing that livability as economic development. And so utilizing the county's core social services investments that you're already making and positioning them as economic development infrastructure. So livability, to just housing, health, behavioral health, childcare, public safety, and all of the rest, directly determines whether people can participate in the workforce and whether businesses can retain talent. So we broke each one of these recommendations into some near-term action recommendations for you. So framing the county livability investments as employer retention tools in budget narratives. As we learned about the different programs that the county provides in social services and spoke with different businesses, they would mention how they thought the county was kind of working on a something livability related, but they didn't see how that could count as an investment into economic development. But in the same sentence, they were saying how they needed their community, or they needed their employees to feel safe, and they needed their employees to have access to quality healthcare and childcare and the likes of that. So by reframing the livability investments, the narrative, and including that in the budget narrative, I think it would be really strong and well suited for the business community. And then also establishing metrics connected to service delivery outcomes or connecting service delivery outcomes to business climate indicators. A second role that the county could play in a recommendation would be coordination. The county is uniquely positioned to align fragmented systems across jurisdictions, where no single city or agency can address the region's competitiveness and challenges independently. This is where we can see the county being the convener and then aligning and bridging those gaps. And so as it stands right now, two businesses facing similar challenges may have very different experiences depending on their access and familiarity with the county system. So the City of Gresham's Economic Development Department was highly praised by businesses for their availability and willingness to find answers outside of their purview. And other departments were praised as well, but sometimes people weren't sure if they needed to go to their cities or their counties. So some near-term actions that can be taken place, or that could take place, would be to initiate regional tax competitiveness dialogues with city, metro, and state, establishing some employer retention, early warning functions through existing partners. So an early warning system could systematically monitor whether major traded sector employees are considering relocation or departure or expansion. So no one in the ecosystem is really doing this at this time. There are different VRE programs in place, but this could be a great opportunity for the county to have an early warning system to keep an eye on how the business or the traded sectors are operating. So if a major employer is weighing whether to leave or downsize, as of right now, there's not really a structured way for the county or its partners to know about it early enough to respond. And it's all informal relationships right now or after the fact news. So in practical terms, it would look something like regular check-ins with the county's largest traded sector employers, tracked through existing partner organizations to flag risk signals before they become public announcements. And then another way to work on coordination would be to develop some shared roles and handoffs, map with partner organizations. And then a fourth thing would be to activate the county facilities in priority geographies through community development corporation partnerships to really deliver workforce and small business services. This is something that a lot of stakeholders mentioned in having a clear definition of who does what role, and then integrating those maps with the partner organizations and utilizing the space that the county already has and the facilities that are already present. And then the third pillar for the county's role in our recommendations would be discipline. It would be to apply fiscal tools strategically with clear accountability for outcomes, really focusing on roles that are additive and not duplicative, adding new initiatives without aligning existing ones, risk compounding, not reducing and fragmentation. So some near-term actions in the way that those could look would be to conduct opportunity cost review of the video lottery funds allocations, and then require placement outcomes as a condition of workforce funding. And so those were our three primary pillars of recommendation for the county. And again, this is all focused towards the county's core mission and really making sure that the county has a comparative advantage within that coordination, workforce alignment, and enabling conditions.
Great, appreciate that presentation. For the record again, my name is Brian Hockaday. I'm Chief of Staff for Commissioner Julie Brim Edwards. Next slide, please. So in addition to the comparative analysis included in the Economic Development Landscape Report, we wanted to make sure to spend some time talking about the county's historic and current roles in economic development. And as Commissioner Brim Edwards, and it was acknowledged earlier, historically economic development initiatives in Multnomah County have been led by cities and partnering entities with a focus on the downtown core in the central city. However, in fact, the county does contribute directly to the local economy, in addition to our unique role and responsibility as the provider of health and social services here in the community. And there's that link between the county's role and economic development. The ability for the county to fund and provide these vital services is directly linked to the health of the local economy. It is also important to Commissioner Brim Edwards in particular that the county, as a $4 billion organization, think strategically about the investments the county makes in the community and that which support a diverse workforce. And that's where this landscape report comes in and where that discussion that we're having today fits. And just to clarify, this report, although it includes some draft recommendations, by no means is it intended to be the county's economic development strategy. Instead, the real intention here is to provide a set of baseline economic data and that comparative analysis with other jurisdictions in the nation and here locally to help inform additional considerations by the County Commission as we look into other ways that the county can help revitalize the economy and support the workforce. Also importantly, I want to point out that this report includes an overview of the county's existing economic development tools, assets, and levers. These include economic development and empowerment strategies that recognize the county's role in supporting employment services and living wage jobs, expanding access to high-quality preschool, and investing in community-based strategies to mitigate the impacts of climate change. Next slide, please. Additionally, this report considers some of the county's other connections to economic development. Several of them are listed on this slide, and they include revenue from the motor vehicle rental or car rental tax, as well as funding from the transit lodging tax and the Visitors Development Fund. Of course, we want to shout out our county's ongoing and existing partnerships with our cities, as well as other entities, including Prosper Portland, the Port of Portland, Greater Portland, Inc., local business districts and organizations, and academic partners as well, many of whom contributed to the landscape analysis report. And we also want to pay close consideration to the county's capital assets, both existing and new ones. Those include major projects, including the East County Library or Earthquake-Ready Burnside Bridge, which support hundreds of jobs. And also, it goes really directly to the work to create a comprehensive capital management plan that the Commission has already discussed, which will help better inform long-term strategic capital investments. We also wanted to think broadly and consider the county's role with local restaurants and food carts and other ways that we can support local neighborhood business districts. and pursue other creative partnerships and opportunities, some of which we'll cover in the following slides.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Brian. Again, Garrett Pryor, Senior Policy Advisor for the Chair. So let's go to the next slide. So taxes comes up in a lot of these conversations. The county is doing work in taxes as far as using that to spur housing and economic development through foregoing tax revenue with the multiple unit limited tax exemption or multi-tax program. Tax increment financing and the work that goes on administered by Prosper Portland, and also setting an exemption to help out small businesses with the floor of 100K up to 100K there, and gross receipts would be exempted from that tax. Also in the report, we talk about that partnership of the county either as a lessor or lessee. So we're anchor tenant, or we have favorable long-term lease terms with key community partners to extend those services. We have a history in the past of if we own land as the county and we want to dispose that, there's a path to turn that into affordable housing. We have the wonderful Crops Farm out there in D4 that's doing some pretty innovative stuff. And then in the land that we do own in the urban environment, whether it's Vance Vision, Walnut Park, or Hanson, we're looking at placemaking and creative public-private partnerships there. Next slide. We are one of the great restaurant food places in America, and every one of those restaurants has to touch the county through the restaurant permitting work. And although it's a smaller land use footprint like you saw to our neighboring counties, we've had just great work in our land use and planning division and trying to improve and update that work while also protecting our great environmental assets, Columbia Gorge in particular, that is a key economic driver for tourism. And the county did have an economic development manager from 2011 to 2019, reported to the CFO's office and was sort of an ombudsman in the county. And then through our $15 million facilities fund and other investments with Preschool for All, we're not helping not just workers, but also small businesses develop and thrive in our community with that program and work. So with that, we're now going to turn it over to our all-star panel. I believe Stephen Green is online, Kimberly Branham is going to be up first from the Port, and Justin Douglas from City of Gresham. We'll have Kimberly and Justin come sit down at the table with us.
Great, thank you guys so much. And we do have Stephen Green online, is that correct? Okay, wonderful.
All right,
Good
testing the
morning.
mic.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good, thank you. Good morning, Chair Vega Peterson and Commissioners. For the record, I'm Kimberly Branham. I am Chief Trade and Economic Development Officer at the Port of Portland. I want to start by appreciating the opportunity to be with you this morning, but also for the very collaborative approach that your staff and consulting team have taken, and for your leadership in pursuing this question at a really critical time for our region. The Port's mission is to create shared prosperity through trade, travel, and economic development. And we, as the Port, have a very clear understanding of what we do around trade and travel, but we've spent the last year thinking more sort of strategically and in a focused way around what do we mean as the Port around economic development. So sort of in a similar vein to Multnomah County, we spent time thinking about where we can have the greatest impact and how we partner most effectively. So this morning, I'm going to talk just briefly about the work that we've been doing and the synergies we see with the report that you just heard, and then some key areas that we might have slight differences of opinion. So I think I've got a deck. Go to the next slide. One more. Okay, so it was helpful for us to start with a definition of what we mean when we're talking about economic development. And so what we mean when we think about economic development is that economic development is intentional actions to create a strong, inclusive, and competitive economy. You could call it inclusive economic development or just economic development, but economic development is only effective and it's a best practice when it is, in fact, inclusive. So it needs to generate quality private sector jobs, increase household income, and expand equitable access to opportunities. A key point for us in talking about this is that economic growth itself is driven by the private sector. The public sector's role is then to shape the conditions that enable that growth. And we think it's important to distinguish between projects that have a positive economic impact and work that is intentionally focused on long-term competitiveness and job creation, which is what we would put in the bucket of economic development. So not all investments with economic benefit are, by definition, economic development. And this might seem like just a semantic exercise, but when we think about how we're really advancing economic development, we're thinking about long-term competitiveness and inclusive growth. Next slide, please. Okay, so this slide is intended to illustrate that economic development does not happen in isolation. Economic development works closely and in a complementary fashion with community development, community safety and infrastructure, human services, and education. In fact, they rely on one another and they help sustain one another, right? So the critical systems like affordable housing, community safety, infrastructure, education, human services, all of those are really important for creating the business environment and supporting the workforce to be able to engage in economic development activities. Economic development activities then help to create the tax base and the employment opportunities. So it's a important ecosystem that helps, that works best when we are not trying to do one another's jobs. This is my personal perspective, but then when we work like an orchestra, where everybody is playing to the same music, but we're playing our instruments in the way that we need to. And so I think one of the things that I might differ from the way that the consultants talked about it is, I would not say that housing development is economic development. I would say that housing development is critical community development and it's critical infrastructure, and you have to have effective community development systems in order to have, that is a key partner to effective economic development systems. And so that's a little bit the way the Port's thinking about it. It's, you know, there's a lot of different opinions on that, but just you're going to hear us talk about economic development, and when we're talking about it, it's under that circle of economic development. So supporting traded sector and small business development, talent development, place-based investments, and then a healthy business climate. But again, not meaning to undermine, and in fact to underscore how critical it is that community development, community safety, human services, and education are very, very well funded and are effective as well. Next slide, please. All right, this slide, this dizzying slide of logos, illustrates the range of actors involved in economic development. These logos are not meant to be exhaustive, they are illustrative, but it highlights something important, which is that we really have a diverse and complementary ecosystem of players within economic development in our region. So that includes public agencies delivering programs and funding like the City of Gresham that Justin runs, educational and workforce institutions preparing talent, business organizations representing a variety of industry needs, nonprofits providing critical technical assistance and access to capital, and then specialized entities like the Port of Portland that advance targeted priorities. For the Port, mapping this landscape reinforced a core point for us, which is that our role is not to do everything, as tempting as it can be when we see challenges with access to capital. It's tempting to potentially create a new program, but what we realized is our role is to play our role well and effectively partner with others. Next slide, please. So we've spent some time thinking about where we lead, where we partner, and where we support across economic development practices. So we lead in areas where we have unique assets and responsibilities. That's particularly within international trade and investment, so supporting international shipping and air service, administering the Foreign Trade Zone program, helping shape the state's international trade strategy, which includes target markets and international trade missions. We also play a key role as the state of Oregon's largest owner of industrial land, in helping bring forward sites, policy solutions, and infrastructure that support quality jobs on employment lands. Beyond that, we partner closely with others to support business retention and expansion, advance small business and industry cluster initiatives, and engage on key policy issues. And then there are some issues where we play a supporting role, often through funding, like the resources we provide to Greater Portland, Inc., so that they can lead on business attraction and recruitment. As recommended in your report, this disciplined approach allows us to focus on where we are most effective, avoid duplication, and ensure our efforts are additive to the broader system. Next slide, please. So finally, I'll just note that within this framework, I'll highlight three key and current priorities. The first is to retain international container service at Terminal 6. This connection is critical infrastructure for Oregon exporters, the 1,500 related jobs, and the overall competitiveness of our regional economy. The second is our partnership in East Multnomah County to advance inclusive economic development in an area of our region that does not have the same level of quality jobs as we see in other areas of the region. Through projects in our business parks, we're working with local partners to define priorities, to expand access to quality jobs, and support community-defined outcomes. And finally, developing the Mass Timber Housing and Innovation Campus at Terminal 2 is an opportunity to position our region as a global leader in a fast-growing sustainable industry while also supporting housing production and job creation. So we see a real opportunity to continue aligning our efforts with Multnomah County and other partners to ensure that our work is coordinated, additive, and deliver meaningful results. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Chair Vega Peterson and commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. And I just wanted to echo Kimberly's appreciation for you all and your team and the consultants. So my name is Justin Douglas, and I serve as the Director of Economic Development and Urban Renewal for the City of Gresham. Gresham is the second largest city in the metropolitan area and the fourth largest in the state. And I'll note, according to a recent Travel and Leisure article, the 15th most livable city in the Pacific Northwest. If you think about all the places in the Pacific Northwest, 15th isn't bad. I'll also note that's before May 16th, when the most spectacular library in the country is going to open in downtown Gresham. So thank you, County, for your support. It's just a fabulous facility. So Gresham is a growing community that is younger, more diverse, and of more modest means than the county as a whole. And unfortunately, we have a significant structural funding issue marked by property taxes and fees that have not kept pace with rising service costs, particularly for public safety, which is why we recently asked the voters to pass a 5-year public safety levy, and they did. In spite of that challenge and limited financial resources, we are extremely proud of our proactive and can-do approach to job creation and business support. We lead with yes. That is a value that is set by our mayor and by our city council and by our city manager. And if you are a business that wants to move to Gresham, we lead with yes. If you want to invest in our city, we lead with yes. We might not always get there, but we think it's important to welcome business with open arms to our city. So in my remarks today, I'm going to touch on how we do our work through the lens of the city's 3-year economic development strategy. And then share some ideas about how Multnomah County can support our economic development work in Gresham and in East County more broadly. Okay, so I'm going to briefly walk through the 5 pillars of the city's economic development strategy, which our city council blessed in September and includes this fiscal year through fiscal year 27-28. Next slide, please. Gresham has a strong industrial and manufacturing base which underpins our traded sector work. We manage an enterprise zone program that has a proven track record of creating and retaining over 1,000 jobs and includes companies such as Boeing, Microchip, ON Semiconductor, and Medline Industries. Our team also conducts regular retention visits to make sure that our companies feel supported, heard, valued, and wanted in our community. This is becoming increasingly important given that other states are attempting to poach businesses from Oregon, and we also are not as competitive in recruitments for national companies who want large parcels of land. So retention is becoming an increasingly important part of the work that we do. We also commit to a 66-day timeline for permits and approvals for new and expanding traded sector companies. So that's a commitment that we share. Next slide, please. Actually, you can move on to the next one, please. Our team is broadening its reach to support workforce developments in Gresham by strengthening partnerships between employers, career and technical education programs at local high schools, Mount Hood Community College, and the network of workforce providers and funders. This is a new business line for us, so we are still finding the place where we can plug in and add value to the workforce ecosystem and not be duplicative. Next slide. While the name of this next section is a mouthful, and we call it local sector small business entrepreneurs because we aim to support businesses of any size. We don't discriminate based upon employer size, and this work is done primarily through operating probably an inaptly named small business center. So it's not just for small businesses, and it's not an actual physical place, but it is a person, a warm body, an individual who will act as a concierge for building permits, business licenses, code compliance, and all sorts of things that businesses lead to move them through the process of opening their doors. We also manage the Garage to Storefront program, which waives some business license fees and permits for local non-chain businesses. And this program is one of the reasons why Main Street, which you see in this photo, is so vibrant and has so few commercial vacancies. On the next slide, our fourth pillar of our active strategy is around national and regional retail attraction and redevelopment. So this work aims to continue the momentum that Gresham has recently seen with the new Trader Joe's and the most popular QSRs, which are called quick service restaurants. While these businesses may not pay the same wages as our traded sector companies, they've become a point of pride in Gresham that it is worthy of national investors. And they're also a selling point to businesses or households interested in relocation in East County. We also have a number of aging shopping centers that may be nearing the end of their productive economic life. So this strategy commits our assistance to large commercial property owners interested in converting these sites into urban neighborhoods. The final pillar on the next slide of the city's strategy is tourism. The Gresham Area Chamber of Commerce has led this work for years, and the city is looking to support their efforts and also capture some of the positive press that has recently been showered on Gresham and turning that into a destination strategy. I actually heard that there is a niche in tourism that focuses on people interested in libraries. So we're open to all sorts of ways to attract new visitors to our city. So I'd like to close by saying that the team at Gresham that implements this 3-year strategy, acting as a business concierge, managing grant programs, conducting business retention, is comprised of 2.5 staff. By way of comparison, Hillsborough, which is a smaller city than Gresham, has an economic development team of 8. Meanwhile, Troutdale, Wood Village, and Fairview have a combined 1 dedicated staff performing economic development work across all of those cities. So at Gresham, we're certainly proud of our ability to do more with less, but we wouldn't turn down any county financial support if the commission is interested in partnering to support East County job creation and business growth. I understand that the county, Portland and East County cities may be exploring the county's business income tax revenue allocations. This could be an opportunity to invest those revenues based on business need and income levels rather than assessed value and population. Another idea is the county could consider becoming a member of the Oregon Economic Development Association. This is a statewide network, mostly of public sector agencies. Both Washington County and Clackamas County are members and would be a good way for the county staff to connect with statewide economic development issues. I also just wanted to note there are some place-based opportunities like Vance Park, which offer the potential for significant development and job growth through county and Gresham partnership, and this is already well underway. Before concluding, I just wanted to note 2 things in the consultant's remarks that I think I may differ with. One was the idea of having the employer retention early warning function. We generally have a pretty good sense of the businesses in our community and whether they're having trouble and whether or not they are threatening to leave our community. That's part of what business retention is. We certainly would appreciate a lead if the county knew about a business in our community that may want to leave, but generally I'm not sure that that's a function that the county would need to stand up. I think that that's something that's a pinnacle of good local retention work. And then another comment was on the need or interest in creating a county-wide economic development plan. You know, the city of Portland has Advance Portland, which is a 5-year strategy, and as you've just seen, the city of Gresham has a 3-year economic development strategy. So the 2 largest cities in the county do have economic development strategies, which don't look exactly the same, but I think you'll find that they're complementary. So I'm not sure that we need a county-wide economic development plan, but I just wanted to mention that. Closing on a positive, again, just thank you so much for the opportunity to be here, and appreciate the time today.
Thank you so much, Justin. It's great to have you here. Stephen, are you able to come off of mute?
I am.
All right. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Stephen Green, recovering banker, recovering VC. I love my spreadsheets. One of the co-founders of Better Portland, a local business chamber. We have a little over 400 members. Most of our members are businesses with less than 10 employees, which really represents the multitude of businesses that we have within the region. Appreciate the ability to come and chat today. My colleagues that just spoke, I don't want to double down too much on what they said, but I completely double down on what Kimberly and Justin referenced. For the comments that I want to be able to make, I really want to ground it in bringing the perspective of our local businesses and really helping the public sector better understand where our minds are at and how our minds operate when it comes to kind of where we go from here. So I'll reach into my former life as a banker and say, first, any banker will tell you cash is king and trust is queen. And for where businesses are at today, they need that cash, and it's a real sticking point for businesses around where their next customers are going to come from. And so I just really want to magnify that there's urgency right now, and also helping folks understand that in the world of business owners, their lives happen months and quarters at a time, not years, not 5-year plans at a time, really like, what am I going to do today? And so we've kind of identified 5 levers that we think the county can touch on from here, and where they have some power to move forward, and also be able to give them some context on how to move forward as well. So the first thing I'll say before I get into those levers is really understand the difference between outreach and relationships. And I think for the county, how do you go and lean into the opportunity of building relationships, which is something you do with someone, versus outreach, which is something you do to someone? And I think oftentimes from the business sector standpoint, when someone's looking to be elected for office, or when some bad articles come out, things get done to us. Very rarely do we see folks going and really leaning into the long-term work of cultivating relationships with us. So with that, I'll go into kind of the 5 levers that we think about the county has control over. So some of these have been mentioned in a small way. Timing, so I think less about a new plan and think more about a scoreboard. How are we doing today, or this month, or this quarter versus last quarter, when it comes to getting those permits done for those restaurants that are coming in and are really one of the lifeblood of our region, and one of the things that we're really known for? How are we processing those in a timely manner? What was happening last quarter? What did we remove to make it easier for people to get those permits done? What are the new things that we're doing, leveraging technology to help people, remove barriers and getting those things happen? Second lever is really public land. I thought the county team hit on this. There's some placemaking opportunities that we'd really, really, really love to see the county become urgent around, while also continuing to leverage their time and talent and treasures around making sure we have more housing supply here in the area, making sure we're identifying and understanding the barriers to activating retail spaces. And we all love our public markets. How are we finding ways to remove barriers and highlight the work that's happening at the markets across the county? Third lever is really rules. So around regulations, taxes, how is the county able to provide more clarity? I think one of the things that I understand is, we've chosen to run our business here in Oregon. It's one of the most tax progressive places in the country. We happen to be next to the most tax regressive state in the country. And so when I'm talking to a lot of our members and other business owners, they've chosen to pay some higher taxes. And that's not a new thing. I think what many business owners are feeling right now is a lack of connection to the understanding of what they're getting for whatever the taxes they are paying. What are they getting for that? And so just, removing some taxes or, shrinking down some of them, that's not going to take away from the feeling of, I don't know what I'm getting for the taxes that I'm paying today. And as we're all seeing, it's, more and more folks are moving on the other side of the river to avoid some of the taxes. And so I think providing tax clarity and understanding the rules around some of them would really help in the business, the business sector. The fourth lever is convener. The consultants touched on that, and some of the other speakers as well. When the county reaches out, when the chair reaches out, when a commissioner reaches out, people are more willing to come to that than maybe a small business chamber like ours or a local coffee shop asking to have a conversation. How are you all going to leverage in the very near future the continuing of some of these conversations that have happened versus them being some conversations that happened? We did a study, and then maybe folks in the community that wanted to lean more into this weren't able to be part of those conversations. So I think that's one of those things. From a budgetary standpoint, it's not a huge impact. How do you leverage your ability as a convener to bring more of us together and have some of these, oftentimes very difficult conversations? The fifth lever and the most important one, Notorious B.I.G. was right. Like it is literally all about the Benjamins. And right now, when I think about the opportunity for the county when it comes to cultivating trust and getting more connection with businesses here, buy our stuff, right? Like find a way to, support, one of our many local consultants that, know the area really well and could, help inform some of these conversations. Yes, there's the $6 million that you all have identified with lottery funds, but in going through the budget for 2027, I saw that there's $344 million slated to be spent on materials and supplies. So that means, different county jurisdictions are buying paper, pens, smocks, napkins, toilet paper. Imagine a world where the county went and followed the lead of some of the other jurisdictions across the country where they're doing a local preference on those things and supporting local businesses. I think oftentimes in economic development, we talk about traded sector versus non-traded sector businesses, but we don't understand that there's a continuum of many of these local serving businesses turn into traded sector businesses, right? Reese Fine Foods didn't, start as a $1 billion potato salad company. Tillamook Cheese didn't start, being in 60% of refrigerators across the United States. They started serving local areas, and then they grew into that. Another example would be Salt and Straw, right? When they started their business a little over 10 years ago, they weren't identified as a traded sector business. Now they're in Disneyland and Disney World. And a big part of that is, identifying the thing that you have and being able to use your buying power to support the businesses that are here. And so, when it comes to things that you can do in the next month or the next quarter, you could go and say, hey, we're going to get together and we're going to convene some partners and we're going to be the best local procurers of coffee, things, smocks, whatever we need, we're going to learn from what some other cities across the country have done to do something that, again, it still embraces the fiduciary responsibility that you have with tax dollars, but also sends a message to the local businesses here of, we're going to choose you. And I think that's hard to see in the conversation right now around attracting new companies is we don't have local jurisdictions that are going out of their way to choose the businesses that we already have. How can you get a business from Austin or New York to come here when they don't see that happening already? And so I think these are some really near-term things that the county can be thinking about and really leveraging from this analysis to go and think about, okay, what are we going to do next month? What are we going to do next quarter? And so I really appreciate the time. And if any of the commissioners have questions for any of us, here to hang out a little while.
Great. Thank you so much, Stephen. Appreciate that.
Next slide, please. All right, so we are ready to wrap up the presentation for today. Sorry about that. But before I do that, I want to thank all of our panelists, our guests who have joined us today. Thank you very much for your insight and expertise. I also want to thank all of our advisory group members and partners that shared their feedback and input into this report. And also give a shout out to our project team, and in particular Garrett Pryor from the chair's office, who's been a fantastic partner on this project, who's done a lot of heavy lifting, and then also Hayden Miller, who's not here today, but was really pivotal at the very beginning of this project and getting it going. And then in terms of next steps, we will finalize the economic landscape report by the end of April and share that with you all. And then otherwise, are happy to take any questions or turn it over to commission discussion.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you both, and thank you especially to our panelists who are here today. Thank you so much for all of the work that you're doing, but also the way that you brought in what's happening with your organizations and giving the recommendations and suggestions of the right place for the county to show up and the ways that we can do that. So I just appreciate that. I do want to open it up if the board has questions for any of the panelists. I will say we do have another item that we want to get to today and make sure we have a lot of time for that. So I'm going to ask that we, if you have specific questions, to ask that, but then we can maybe have a broader discussion about both this topic and the next one at the end of the next session. So with that, I'll turn it over. Commissioner Moyer, did you have any questions?
Sure, yeah, I do. I was very interested, and thank you all for being available today and sharing your thoughts. I have been trying to think about coordinated efforts because, you know, we do have a $4 billion budget. A lot of that is dedicated to very specific services like Medicaid and that type of stuff. So of our general fund, it's a little limited, but we do procure a lot, as do other public sector entities. And I had seen some efforts in other cities and regions to align major local public sector procurement to benefit local business. There's a couple of different models. Cleveland has a model that kind of ranks not just local, but, you know, how much is reinvested in the community, that type of stuff. And I was interested in your thoughts around using our procurement process in a way that prioritizes local business and businesses that are investing regionally.
Garrett Pryor, Senior Policy Advisor for the Chair. Yes, Commissioner Moyer, I think that's something that even Stephen Green spoke to there at the end. We could work with our good COO and team to see what kind of operational impacts, and would love to have, if you have research from other places, do some research there and bring that back to the board with information.
And then I'm curious, you know, I might fall a little bit on the jobs are not equal. All economic development is not equally beneficial. I do have questions around strategic investments and, you know, is chasing a publicly traded company to relocate here with trying to be, which I don't even think we could be competitive on being the lowest tax area. A strategy that is as beneficial as, how do we grow our, we're Portland, I can't speak for the rest of the county, reputation. Many small businesses have started in Portland and have grown. My wife owns a domestic manufacturing company. And so I'm a little interested in the role public sector and the county should be playing in supporting small and medium-sized businesses and their growth versus how much effort we should be doing to attract already publicly traded.
That's a great question. I think there's interest in pursuing both types of strategies, right? And I think that's where that convening, collaborating role that our consultant source spoke to really fits in terms of the county, making sure that we're in close alignment with strategies that are being pursued by our other partners at the City of Gresham, City of Portland, the Port of Portland, and other economic development organizations.
And then I think my last question, comes to, who our lane versus other entities' lanes, and, how much the livability issues come to play. I heard behavioral health come up. I know homelessness continues to be an issue that shows up in almost every poll. And, to what degree, when we look at what is the county's major role in trying to make the county an attractive place to grow and start or locate businesses here, how do we weigh livability versus the other factors?
That's certainly a theme that we heard from several of our advisory group members and some of the other folks that participated in the interviews, is that they appreciate the traditional role that the county has played as a social service provider, and they're really looking for continued action and leadership from the county to continue to address some of these things that we've been grappling with for years.
And the only thing I'd say to build off of that quickly, Commissioner, is what Kimberly Branham and the Port showed that slide of the different community development, health, livability, safety, economic development. The reason why I had her come up and speak, that's the best capture of describing this complex network of roles I've seen. It's excellent work. So I think and then how do you weigh whether that's correct or not, or that role piece? That's, I think, what the information we brought to you here today to discuss with the commission of what should our role be in looking at the levers we have existing and in place.
All right, thanks so much.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Singleton, any questions?
Just one question, and it can come as follow-up, but also thank you and all of the other folks, both in the room and online, who participated in this work. I am curious if there are particular regulatory barriers. I feel very strongly that we need to figure out a shared state agenda between jurisdictions in this region to look at any of the land use or other types of regulatory challenges that we have. This came up at our Green Jobs table yesterday as well. So I think really looking at how we can think about economic development, the workforce, where we see these same barriers, that we can really develop a better state agenda. And I think if we go with partners, it's a much stronger case than when we all go by ourselves for our own, maybe not quite similar random request. And I would really encourage us to do that with this work too. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Brim-Edwards, any questions?
So just a couple comments. On slide 8, which is the regional context, I would love, just as we move to finalizing the report, to build on the charts here, because I feel that they don't tell the whole story. For example, on the tax competitiveness, I'll just note Clark County, the governor of Washington State yesterday signed the millionaire's tax, and they now have a 9% personal income tax for people earning over $1 million. I also think there's some complexity to, or some nuances that should be shared just as versus like this is a 14% because the vast majority of individuals don't pay the 14%. So it's tiered. So I just think it should be layered on because it's somewhat, I don't want to say misleading, but there's more to the story. And again, I know that Clark County just did that, or has that impact from yesterday, but it should be the story going forward that they do have that. It also does not have a column on the sales tax, which is actually where Oregon has an advantage. Travel Portland, actually that's part of their, like one of their pillars of their advertising campaigns is come here because like we don't have a sales tax. So again, just to share a more complete picture. I also would love to see an affordability index of, and a wage index that compares the different places. Again, a competitive advantage Multnomah County could have. Again, we would need to see this is that the whole preschool and childcare. If you live in Multnomah County and you're a young family, that could be a competitive advantage. So, and also just looking at the median wages, because I do think we need to think about the types of jobs that we're supporting, that come with benefits, retirement plans. Are they the type of jobs that are actually going to be economic accelerators and create a thriving community, or ones in which there might need to be significant public sector investments because, for example, no health care is provided. So that's just a comment. I'd love the, like what is the county's role, and it's not duplicative, so it's a really key point. I do want to, just as we get to furthering the development of the final report, look at the county being not so much a convener, but maybe setting up the whole picture. For example, on that same page on slide 8, it has that like the county has no industrial land. So if you're looking from the outside and it's like, oh, there's no industrial land, but actually we do have industrial lands. It just is within the cities within Multnomah County. And I know when I worked in the private sector and we were looking at citing something in a region, usually the county provided not necessarily here's what's in our county unincorporated lands, but here's the industrial land within the cities and then incorporated areas. So you got a full picture. And I think because each individual city is going to be talking about what they have, but they're not going to be talking about maybe what Gresham's maybe not be saying, well, here's what Portland has. But the county could provide that larger picture. And again, it's not duplicative, rather it's sort of elevating what's happening in individual cities and telling a more complete picture about what our sort of value proposition is here. So as we think about moving forward, those are some things that I would like to see. Just back to Commissioner Moyer's question about sort of livability, I think, so this is one of those things that I think individual businesses talk about, but it would be great in the report maybe to quantify it in some way that's put together so it's quantifiable. I know, for example, there was a very large private healthcare provider in the city of Portland and Multnomah County who pulled together, it's probably focused on the city of Portland and public safety, asking about, well, basically, like they couldn't sustain their presence. And again, more than 100 very high-paying jobs. And their primary issues were relating to the safety and livability, safety for their employees and also the patients. And so it's real, but I think we need to figure out ways in which we quantify, like how real is it? Is it everywhere? What specifically is it? And then, where we have actually strategies and are doing things about it, whether it's the Organized Retail Theft Task Force or other things that actually are taking measurable steps to address those things. Because otherwise it's more just like people talking informally about that being an issue, but really how is the county and the services it provides and the steps it's taking actually helping create a more, a business environment in which people feel like they can stay here in Multnomah County.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate that. And I think we can have a time for more feedback on some of the things in the report as well after this meeting. Commissioner Jones-Dixon.
Yeah, just a few comments per usual. Thank you for just the presentation. Thank you both for bringing this forward. We are creating the conditions where businesses can thrive, and I think we nailed it as it pertains to just the recommendations. I'm biased. I always say that Gresham is leading the way. Justin, you did a pretty good job as far as describing the success, and then same with Kimberly. We've been tracking the work that Emily Bauer has been leading on the ECDEV front as well. I won't add any additional comments for the recommendations that have been made. I will flag that we're just engaging with OSU, the extensions and the farmers as well, when we think about like agro-tourism and just like our permitting process and things like that. All of that plays a role. So I will not pontificate this morning, fully supportive, and look forward to creating the conditions where our businesses can thrive and future businesses as well. So thank you again, and thank you, team, for being here as well and putting together a really good presentation that we can work off of moving forward.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll just say again, thank you to Stephen Green, to Justin Douglas, and to Kimberly Branham for being here today. Brian and Garrett for all of your work on this. And I know that you're providing feedback to other government agencies as well, as part of the conversations that are happening. So I'm grateful you took the time to show up and share with us today. From the work and passion that I've heard from this board and for all of the people, especially all of the advisory table members who also participate in this process, I really feel confident in saying that this commission is listening to the concerns we hear about the economy and are looking really eager to find ways that we can improve our role, but staying within our lane and not duplicating efforts, which I think is really important, but providing a welcoming and relational interaction with businesses, with our partners, with Multnomah County. So thank you all for that. With that, we are going to move into our second conversation today, and this is about the workforce table that was convened by Commissioner Shannon Singleton and Commissioner Jones-Dixon, and I'm really excited to turn that over to Commissioner Singleton to kick us off. Go.
Thank you, Chair. I do want to Commissioner Jones-Dixon, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to say to open, but wanted to thank you for your partnership and give you an opportunity to speak before I dive right into the presentation.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for your leadership in facilitating the meetings. My staff has been tracking the work. Looking forward to building off of just what we've learned, especially when we start diving into the ag side as far as workforce. So I'll hand it back off to you for the sake of time. Thanks again.
Thank you. I think what I wanted to uplift is this table was convened in May to look at, focused on trades and manufacturing and find opportunities for where the county could really show up to support people moving into the trades, both completing pre-apprenticeship, but also apprenticeship training and ultimately securing family wage jobs. I think there's a connection where we are doing a lot of work in anti-poverty services at the county, but we do very little work to actually enable those people to move out of poverty and into a living wage or a family wage income. And so that was the catalyst for pulling what turned into an amazing group of people together. This group came up with a number of recommendations that we'll walk through today. There were some barriers that were identified, excuse me, as well as some things that are really good opportunities that we're already investing in that might need some additional funds to just really take that next step. One thing I want to highlight is there was a budget note that I also did around our workforce programs. We spend $44 million at Multnomah County in workforce, and it is an absolutely disjointed effort where there are not even always, excuse me, economic or workforce outcomes connected to those funds. So that will definitely be something that you'll see me want to address as we step into our next budget cycle. But briefly, I want to thank Corky Collier from Columbia Corridor Association, Pat Daniels and Noah Kone, who with Constructing Hope, Lauren Bulling with Iron Workers We had Con Tran with NAMAC. We had Anjanette from LIUNA, Bridget Quinn with IBEW Training, Kim Neal from Oregon Tradeswomen, Amy James Neal, who you hear from today, Chris Brito with Portland Public Schools, Raina Usman from Portland Youth Builders, Conley and Bobby Stewart with PBDG, Amy Fleck, Rosette with Prosper Portland, as well as Deanna D'Souza, Adriel Pearson, and Anthea Sampiero from Work Systems. We also had a number of departments, Community Services, County Human Services, County Management, Homeless Services Department, the chair's office, Garrett, who was also involved in this effort, as well as our friends from District 4. I want to give a special thanks to my executive assistant, Jenna Basner, who many do not know is also a journeyman electrician and was absolutely critical in coordinating this table, but helping to tease out ways that we could show up as a county better for the trades. So I will hand it over to Quinn Calling to start the presentation, and appreciate all the guests who are here with us today.
Hello, board and chairs. For the record, my name is Quinn Calling, and I am the Chief of Staff for Commissioner Shannon Singleton. I'm going to jam through these slides. Just in general, we had 3 themes that came out of this work: support for pre-apprentices and apprentices, respectful workplace safety, and the need for a state agenda. We brought in a few folks today to help us have this conversation, and so I'm going to hand it over to Noah Kone right now to talk about his experience at Constructing Hope.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Board. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. My name is Noah Kone. I'm the Executive Director for Constructing Hope. We are a nonprofit pre-apprenticeship training program based in Northeast Portland, and we serve primarily folks who identify as low-income and or justice-impacted or formerly incarcerated. Pre-apprenticeship training programs in Portland, like Constructing Hope or Oregon Tradeswomen, POYC, Latino Build, Portland Youth Builders, serve as critical entry points for underserved populations, including formerly incarcerated individuals, those in recovery, people experiencing houselessness, and low-income families, providing both the hard skills and the soft skills needed to enter union apprenticeships. Because our program entry requirements mirror the exact prerequisites of union apprenticeships, programs must interview nearly twice as many candidates as they can enroll, meaning many motivated individuals are turned away or not for lack of potential, but for lack of foundational support for things like GEDs, driver's license, or housing. The window to engage someone who is at risk is narrow, and every referral away from the door, even to a trusted partner, risks losing that person to discouragement entirely. If pre-apprenticeship programs were resourced to offer wraparound support services directly, they could serve more people without breaking that critical moment of connection. So why does this matter? Approximately 22% of the region's construction workforce is at or nearing retirement age. That means 55 plus. And with only 55% of apprentices completing their training programs, the pipeline pressure on pre-apprenticeship programs is quite significant. There are some things that the county is doing that is working. Examples are like the Regional Workforce Equity Agreement and by extension, the Labor Management Community Oversight Committee that ensures that community is included, it holds employers accountable, and it measures and tracks those outcomes. Wraparound support service tied to workforce development is the most effective model for helping individuals achieve lasting upward mobility, and pre-apprenticeship programs are uniquely positioned to deliver that and already address the whole person. Projects like the Library Bonds or the Rose Quarter, the Broadway Corridor demonstrate the stakes pretty clearly. The construction industry creates generational wealth, and pre-apprenticeship programs ensure that the people building Portland's future can actually afford to live in it. Pre-apprenticeship programs should be recognized not only as workforce development tools, but as essential social services and be funded accordingly. And I just wanted to say thank you to, the board and Commissioner Singleton and her staff for leading the charge and engaging with community. Toss it back.
Thanks, Noah. Next slide, please. A large number of the recommendations that came out of this table support pre-apprentices and apprentices. I'm going to walk through a few of them and provide some updates. First is pre-apprenticeship stability investment. Retention is key for pre-apprenticeship trainees and apprentices. Providing multi-year flexible funding to pre-apprenticeship programs for wraparound services and program operation needs like GED support and childcare can support more people who are already receiving community support services and prioritize them for training programs. More to come from Commissioner Singleton on this soon. County placements. A logical place to see how the county can support pre-apprenticeship training is to look inward. There is a potential to build on existing county programs and internships. Again, more to come on this from Commissioner Singleton. Public awareness campaign. The workforce table participants discussed how it is important to shift perceptions and reduce stigma around a career in the trades, and that these careers can and should be a first choice, not just a fallback. The idea of a public awareness campaign came to light. Some progress has been made in this area. A new website is live, c2p2.info, put together by the Regional Collaborative Committee of the Construction Career Pathways Program convened by Metro. It shares real stories of real people, discusses projects from around the region, and provides resources and ways to get involved in the work for employees and employers. The next recommendation is benefit retention incentives. Nearly every participant identified this as a top priority. So many pre-apprentices and apprentices lose their public benefits quickly. Most said that the loss of SNAP was significant. Even if you make slightly higher wages, many still pay over a third of their income on childcare and depend on SNAP. There is no gradual off-ramp to most benefit programs. OHP has a bridge, but few know about it. Temporary layoffs are a major reality for people in this field, and they often are viewed as a hardship and part of the career field, and participants do not qualify for benefits. Right now, District 2 staff and members of the table are researching existing programs and will provide a recommendation in the weeks ahead. Career awareness for educators. Attendees agreed that the trades needed to be introduced at a much younger age and presented as a serious career option. There's potential for the county to look for education opportunities within our existing programs. Getting folks into the trades and putting in supports are just part of the equation. Retaining employees readily came up as a major theme at this table. One area that is critical for employee retention is ensuring that people have a safe place to work. Hostile work site culture exists throughout the trades, and respectful workplace programs have been successful at addressing these work sites. I'll pass it to Amy James Neal, who can expand on these issues and respectful workplace programs.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for this time. My name is Amy James Neal. I work for Portland Community College in the Office of Planning and Capital Construction. We're a construction office that renovates and builds the many structures on PCC's campuses and centers. And there I serve as the Workforce and Contracting Equity Manager. My role there is to ensure that there's opportunity for craft workers to develop in their respective trades and advance in their careers, but also to make sure that there are small businesses that can do business with the college in the construction. But I'm a carpenter by trade, and I spent more than 25 years out in the field, first as an entry-level laborer, and then moving up to a mid-level carpenter, and then a lead, and then a foreman and a superintendent, and eventually a business owner, a small construction company. And I loved the work. I loved being a carpenter. But what I did not love is people's behavior. I was almost always the only woman on the job site, and I experienced a lot of extra scrutiny because of that. And I had a number of dark moments of bullying and harassment and hazing and exclusion and isolation. So as a result of that, as a result of loving the industry and loving what I did, but not liking the behavior, I wanted to do something to put more non-traditional workers into the industry. So I shuttered my company, and I took a role with Oregon Tradeswomen. And like Constructing Hope, it's a pre-apprenticeship program that prepares non-traditional workers for careers in the construction trades. And it's in my 12 years in that role that has me here talking to you today. What I saw with the thousands of students that left that program, after 6 months or 1 year or 2 years or 5 years, they would come back to me as their trainer and say, you know what, I love the work, I love being a pile driver or an operator or a roofer. What I did not like is being treated, and the way I was treated, and I'm leaving the industry as a result of it. I don't like feeling sick. I don't like it that I don't get trained. I get moved from job site to job site, and I need to leave the industry. So the construction industry has done a really good job of systematizing physical safety. You know, no matter where we go in Multnomah County or in Oregon or across the United States, we all wear hard hats. We all wear our safety glasses, high-vis vests. You know, we wear our fall protection. It's baked into the culture, physical safety, baked into the culture. No matter where we go, no matter which project, you can expect that behavior. But what is less systematized and less baked in is psychological safety. So if a worker is being bullied and harassed or hazed or excluded or isolated, they're working under duress. And a person that's working under duress is much more likely to experience depression, sleeplessness, family tension, anxiety, frustration, and low morale. They're less safe, their colleagues are less safe, and they're much more likely to leave the industry as a result of this behavior. This is something that we can control. I have a couple of slides. So I want to talk about just very briefly suicide in the construction industry. There are about 1,000 deaths per year, fatal injuries on construction sites. 5 times that are by suicide. 4 times higher than the general population, construction workers by suicide. This is an epidemic. This is something that we need to face. And next slide. These are some statistics. I won't read through them, but this is specifically the Institute for the institute that did the study is in the left. But some of the experiences specifically for women. So white men, higher risk of suicide. Women of color, higher risk of attrition out of the construction trades. So at a time when our region is facing unprecedented workforce shortages, that's what my contractors tell me on our construction projects. We just can't afford to lose any craft workers. Commissioner Singleton just said that we invest, what is that, $44 million in workforce development? We can't lose any of those workers to this behavior. So the Interstate Bridge Replacement Project's own workforce market study said 2 things. They had 2 recommendations. They had a number of them, but 2 of them stood out to me, is the increased recruitment of a diverse workforce, and NOAA's program and others are working on that. But it was interesting to me that they said we need to increase retention of that diverse workforce through addressing job site culture. And I'm going to read a very, very short paragraph, because it's not just my experience as a worker. It's not just the experience that I observed of the students of pre-apprenticeship program. This is what they said. Harassment remains a significant issue on job sites. This harassment based on gender, race, and other identities, harassment of apprentices, and disrespect often experienced by all workers. Workers also experience isolation and exclusion. This impacts the industry's ability to retain current workers and recruit future workers. The industry has not yet widely adopted policies and practices that effectively address job site harassment and issues of discrimination. So the antidote to the incivility in our industry is culture change work. It's culture change work. So Commissioner Singleton's workforce panel correctly identifies that we need to invest in worker retention through respectful worksite programming. So respectful worksite programming, what is this? This is a bystander intervention program modeled much like safety, physical safety in the construction industry. It's modeled by the leaders. It's reinforced on a daily basis. All workers that come onto the project are oriented to the expectations around safety, physical safety, and again, it's reinforced and modeled. Respectful worksite program is exactly that. So job site leadership models the behavior. They are taught bystander intervention skills. The new workers that are coming on and new subcontractors that are coming on are outlined the expectations of behavior and what behaviors are not accepted. They're told what will happen as a result of those behaviors. They are given bystander intervention skills, and this is reinforced over the life of the project, just like physical safety. It's reinforced, it's modeled, there are images up on the signs, there are ways in which workers can express concern. So respectful worksite programming for Portland Community College is transforming the way we do business. It is part of the way we select our contractors. It is part of our enforcement of our safety policies. And it helps workers that have experienced generational poverty. They're coming out of homelessness. They are coming out of incarceration. It helps them stay in the role because they can bring their whole selves to the job. They feel a sense of belonging, and they feel like they're going to get trained and advance in their careers. So we really do have an opportunity to recalibrate how we think about safety on our construction projects through respectful worksite programming. We have to see this as a safety practice. It's not peripheral, it's not optional, it is part of safety, and it's part of preserving our investment in workforce. I appreciate the time.
Thanks. Thanks, Amy. Next slide, please. One more slide. Excellent. What we heard consistently at the workforce table is that retention requires intentional systems that support workers and help contractors succeed in creating strong, stable workplaces. Respectful workplace programs are a key part of that, but they don't stand alone. They need to be embedded into the way the county contracts, tracks outcomes, and supports employers in meeting shared goals. The groundwork and potential for achieving this lives in county tools we already have, specifically in ARWIA and ARWIA 2.0. Through the upcoming negotiation of ARWIA, there is an opportunity to better align county investments with the outcomes we've been discussing today, including pre-apprenticeship training, strengthening coordination across pre-apprenticeship and workforce partners, expanding respectful workplace program subsidies that include expectations and support and tie ARWIA funding to outcomes, expanding contractor supports to help employers meet expectations and succeed, update and revise penalties and approaches for noncompliance to improve outcomes, and improving how we track outcomes like placement and retention. This approach reflects the workforce table recommendations, giving employers the tools, clarity, and partnership needed to deliver strong outcomes and ensuring county investments are working as intended. Now I'll pass it to Maggie Chavez to expand on how ARWIA is already engaging with this issue and where there's opportunity to go further.
Good afternoon, morning, Chair and Commissioners. Thank you so much for having me here. For the record, my name is Maggie Chavez, and I am the Supplier Diversity Officer for Multnomah County. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the ARWIA to address the alignment across our systems, because I think it's important to see the ARWIA not as a standalone policy, but as the connective tissue, if you will, to a larger regional ecosystem. So I and Brian Smith, my manager, coordinate between the Regional Funders Collaborative, public agencies, the Safe from Hate Alliance, and a lot of our regional partners to ensure that workforce efforts are not siloed, but are driving towards the same North Star. And part of that regional collaborative committee, I will say, our chairs are flanking me here. So Noah Kone and Amy James Neal and I work quite often hand in hand and have great working relationships because, like I said, this is a regional effort. And we all are constantly checking our notes to make sure, like I said, we are driving towards that same North Star. So where the ARWIA and the workforce report currently align right now is the public awareness campaign. So item 1 on page 3, the report, like Quinn mentioned, highlights our new website, our regional website, c2p2.info, and it's already live and performing the exact function of serving as a hub for worker stories and resources, not just data, the actual people who are building our buildings. The pre-apprenticeship stability that Noah Kone had talked about also is item number 3 on page 4. We have already secured the foundation of support through a contract that we have currently with Work Systems. Back in fiscal year 2023, we made a $1 million commitment. So we committed to $1 million, $200,000 a year for 5 years. That commitment is coming up to end in fiscal year 2027. And also on the front of accountability. So we currently utilize the ARWIA PAC, lots of acronyms, the Regional Workforce Equity Agreement, Public Advisory Committee, our Labor Management Community Oversight Committee, and the Regional Collaborative Committee to maintain a high level of alignment between contractors, trade organizations, and the public. And one other thing that we did recently in February was hold feedback sessions to get direct feedback from the community that was impacted by the library bond and the ARWIA's implementation on the library bond. So there we had 4 distinct groups. We had our prime contractors and owners rep groups. We had our community partners, we had our trade organizations, and we also had a distinct group for subcontractors, our local business owners who are our neighbors and boots on the ground. So from those feedback sessions and from just our general learning experiences of the ARWIA, we have learned that the ARWIA, the next iteration of the ARWIA, represents an opportunity to build on this foundation by strengthening our tracking and improving our long-term outcomes. So enhancing our tracking. We are in the process of transitioning our public record, our certified payroll system of record for the county. So on construction projects, the way that we track our workforce utilization is all through the submission of certified payrolls, and the county is currently going through a transition to e-comply to have a lot more granular level of detail on data and apprenticeship demographic goals and it'll allow us to move towards beyond just simple headcounts and into actually tracking folks through the system and how they're actually progressing throughout their careers. And as Amy James Neal shared so eloquently, we are also going to be pushing in the next iteration of the ARWIA for it to have and further integrate respectful workplace programming because of how incredibly impactful it is to the workers on site and to safety on our construction projects. So, again, one of the biggest themes that I pulled out of the workforce report was the sense of stronger accountability. So the ARWIA has a strong enforcement mechanism for contractors who fail to make honest efforts toward the ARWIA's workforce goals. And under the ARWIA, we have assessed $67,000, a little bit over $67,000 in liquidated damages to date on the library bond. We are currently we will be renegotiating these goals and the liquidated damages amount to make sure that they are aligned with the current workforce demographics and our intended goals. Because this isn't just about penalties, it's about creating expectations that drive successful placement and actual retention. So with that, we took the feedback sessions and the sense of accountability that we needed to uphold to heart, and to support these outcomes over time, we must focus on both contractor and workforce development. So supporting our COBID firms. We are seeing success in how we engage COBID firms, but we also recognize the need for additional wraparound supports to help them succeed in high compliance environments. And also my team is regarding the proposal to lower the workforce training and hiring program thresholds. That's the small incubator program on item number 6 on page 8. My team is conducting a deep dive cost benefit analysis from the data in our system of B2G for all contracts over $250,000 to ensure any policy change is matched with the necessary technical resources for smaller contractors. In summary, the ARWIA provides the framework to move the workforce table's recommendations from vision to action. By better aligning our systems and supporting our contractors, we ensure that the county construction projects are a reliable engine for regional equity and family change careers. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Maggie. Pass it back to Commissioner Singleton to talk about potential state agenda. Next slide, please.
Thank you. Excuse me. So as I mentioned in the last presentation, there was a number of things that I think came up of we could have a unified statewide agenda that includes some partners and not just government jurisdictions. One of those is multi-year funding. The funding environment for pre-apprenticeship programs is challenging to set up when you're constantly having to wait and see what your next funding might look like, as well as a need around data and unified pathways portal. So this is something that will live with BOLI, and there's some work to do with them to look at what those opportunities are, what the cost might be. But this came up as something across the trades that would be really helpful, I think, to Maggie's point of actually tracking people through. Pretty much folks only know I've handed off this pre-apprenticeship graduate to this apprenticeship program, and then if they have the relationship, they might know what happens with that person, but there's no actual data system. We rely right now on the human beings and their skill sets to be tracking people, and that's not really the best method. So those are a few of the potential state agenda items that we'll bring when we're developing our next agenda. And I think just to share some next steps, next slide, we have already working now to develop a education for educators. So Portland Public Schools is working with Jenna on my team, as well as I think Maggie's pulled into that, to have a session at the Oregon Trade Women's Fair to look at that education for educators, school counselors, and additionally a recommendation of having quarterly check-ins with this group to have some accountability was another recommendation, and we had our first quarterly check-in early this month. And then lastly, I would say some of the future tables, Commissioner Jones-Dixon mentioned agriculture. We did start the green jobs conversation yesterday, and it's building off of the already existing climate plan that our trades and AFL put together, but looking at specifically what is the county's role and how can we show up to support increased workforce opportunities for folks in that sector. And again, I want to just, Noah, is at both tables. And so just want to really appreciate you continuing to show up and advocate for the needs of our pre-apprentices and our pre-apprenticeship programs.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Appreciate the work that you and your office and your entire team have done on this. I'm going to open it up for questions and comments from the board. We'll go to Commissioner Brim Edwards.
Thanks for bringing this forward, Commissioner Singleton and Jones Dixon. Thanks for the presentation. I had one question and just a comment, and I'm looking forward to the sort of next steps. One question I had is, I understand just from talking to a lot of the local unions that the pre-apprenticeship programs and some of the apprenticeship programs, they're not accepting new cohorts because of the just high level, well, because of the lagging economy and in some ways a lack of work for journeymen. So I'm curious about, and I also think that the other piece is if the pipeline's not filling up and you have retirements in the future, that's a dangerous thing. So I'm interested if anybody wants to comment on sort of like, given the current economy and sort of what's happening with some of the pre-apprenticeship programs, how do we continue to keep that part of the pipeline sort of flowing, knowing that we absolutely need to do that, even though right now there's a slowdown and sort of the impacts that's having on the journeyman and also the apprentice programs?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, no, yes, it's really hard to train people for opportunities that aren't there, right? So part of the work we're doing is diversifying the career pathways that people can go into in anticipation that the rubber band will eventually snap back. And so at some point, when the economy does start to turn around or we start to see some of these projects stood up, the workforce needs will still be there. Fortunately, we are still seeing the same amount of volume of individuals showing up to our program saying they want to take, get into the trades and pursue these career pathways. They see it as a viable way to get upward mobility. And so we try to engage with them to say, hey, for 6 months, you may have to do something slightly different or parallel to what that career pathway might be. But then when that need comes back, you'll be well positioned with your certifications. All of the pre-apprenticeship training programs give OSHA certifications, first aid, CPR, you get some green building certs. So you're going to be well equipped for the job market no matter what the situation is.
Yeah, some base level.
Some base level things, right. Having your flagging certification, things like that allow you to mobilize, and then when opportunity comes, you'll be ready. So, times are tough. We are still engaging with our trade partners. We still take site visits out to those different programs and apprenticeships and have them come by quarterly, but we're just kind of waiting for things to come back. So.
And Commissioner, I would just add, I think part of what Noah was talking about too that came up yesterday was what are the kind of parallel types that it might not be necessarily the same skills, but this is an opportunity for you to learn on the job about just other components. For example,
softer skills.
I'm a social worker, but I needed to know how to budget, right? And so my job doing accounting work was really helpful, but it wasn't applicable to the skill set of my current job. And so that's some of the things that were talked about. And I would add, the other is where I think it dovetails with economic development is where does the county show up as a job creator and what is our role in ECDEV when it comes to our land and the ability to leverage our resources is where I think these two conversations fold together really well.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones Dixon. Oh, I'm sorry, did you have any more questions?
I did.
Oh, okay.
Also, it looked like somebody else was, did you want to comment?
Sure, I just wanted to add on to that. Also, the work that I'm trying to do also is to make sure that the contracts that we hold with our pre-apprenticeship programs and work systems are nimble enough to be able to have the funding be flexible towards recruitment or retention. So right now our contracts are kind of driven towards recruitment or retention. So we're trying to do that work on the back end for our contracts to make sense so that our pre-apprenticeship programs are able to pull the levers when they need to, whenever the economic climate looks different, that they need to switch over to recruitment versus retention, or sorry, the opposite, retention versus recruitment. So trying to bake in some level of flexibility, but still have that accountability of where the money's going is something that we're looking into as well.
Thanks. And so this is a little bit, this is a comment maybe about just as the county thinks about the whole issue of the public awareness campaign. So when ballot measure 98 passed, which was the Career Technical Program. It infused a lot of resources into high schools. And I think, like, I was at the Portland Workforce Alliance Fair the other day where thousands of high school students showed up. I think looking at what in the past would not be considered sort of traditional career paths for a lot of students. I think there's a revolution happening right now in high school for high school kids, in the sense of, especially in Multnomah County, like all the new Portland high schools have, and their modernized high schools have very robust CTE spaces, and including in the trades. And so I do think students and youth are being now exposed to careers that they wouldn't have been exposed to in the past. You know, it used to be when you had shop in middle school, and then if you were interested in the trades, you went to Benson, sort of the crown jewel of CTE. And so I think there's a whole nother universe. So sort of in some ways, connecting to all of the work and the messaging that's happening at the high school level. David Douglas just opened a beautiful career technical education center in January. So there's great work happening to expose young people to a range of careers that have, you know, family wages, benefits, all the things that people want. So how we connect to that, I think, is going to be really important, because there's a lot of work happening there, and they're communicating with the future workers. And then my last just comment is, Amy, I want to just thank you for focusing on workplace culture, and I think also sort of vividly illustrating like that it can be done, how workplace safety just became that's just something that's done. And so I think in terms of changing culture, that's a great example of like, it can happen. It's not this impossible thing to shift the culture. So I'm sorry about your experience, and I appreciate that you're focused on shifting that culture so that everybody feels that those jobs are welcoming and inclusive places to work. So, thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Jones-Dickson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And per usual, just want to say thank you for just your commitment and your contributions to this work. It's a lot of time, and also for highlighting, to Commissioner Brim Edwards' point, just the importance of focusing on psychological safety within the workplace across the board, and setting the standard as well, and the expectation for folks that are choosing to work here. And then also thinking outside of the box, knowing that there aren't a lot of opportunities yet, but also preparing, creating pathways and preparing folks for other opportunities as those opportunities come on board. Very much looking forward to the climate workforce table and the ag work as well, and also thinking outside of the box as far as strengthening and creating additional pathways to support this work moving forward, and also intentionally reaching out to the school districts, because like you said, most of the districts have very strong CTE programs, and they're thinking about these things, and the students want to work and make money. So thank you again.
All right. I just want to real quickly on the schools. They're at the table, PPSs. I think the other piece has been that it's not just the school counselors, it's also educating parents, so that when kids say this is the job I want, it's not fourth choice, it's their first choice, and that's okay. So I think there was some really good conversation from our experts who are doing that work on where there's some intervention needed. So, and the C2P2 website you all should really check out. It's got some really cool testimonials from folks.
Yeah, and simple things just like letting the students know that there are opportunities. Having a 15-year-old now who's been working at a daycare last summer, she's like, I didn't know that I can work and these opportunities exist, and I would much rather be in the workplace learning something and making money at the same time instead of sitting on Roblox. And yes, a 15-year-old still plays Roblox. So.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Moyer.
Yeah. Amy, lovely to see you. It's been a while. Having spent some of my career in the construction industry, everything from a flagger to an operator to project manager to owning a company. I do think we got to talk about the supports necessary to sustain a diverse workforce, particularly women. You know, I have had jobs that were 6 days a week. I've had jobs very normal for 10-hour days, very normal to need to start at 6 a.m. These are all very, very difficult things if you have a child and you are the primary parent or custodial parent, which is very common for women, and it's a massive barrier. Childcare is one of the biggest challenges for women in the trades. This is an area that I think the county has a role in, particularly for preschool age. We have to care about odd hour care and understand that if we want to make these jobs available to a diverse workforce, then we have to change the support, because the industry really developed as the man goes to work and the woman takes care of everything. So you can, and a guy can make, 100,000 plus by working, 6 10s. And, I worked out at the chip manufacturer in Hillsborough, who shall not be named. My job is, we did that because we had tight timelines, and that's what it was. And there was no flexibility about that. There was no access to childcare. There was just the expectation is like, you're there and you cannot, if you're late, you're in deep trouble. If you call out, you're in deep trouble. And I think we have to think about how an industry has been set up for a model that is not diverse, and how do we, as a major purchaser or a major owner, how do we modify our expectations on our job sites? I also think, the culture issue is totally real. It is, I think I left the industry in 2020 during COVID. So, a while ago, but not that long ago. And it is like being in 1970, the way that women and minorities are treated still. Part of that is not going to change until we start demanding diverse leadership on these projects, not just how many apprentices do you have or how many journey level. Who is your superintendent? How many superintendents are women or people of color? How many project managers are women or people of color? Because when you got, even if you're going to be the head of a crew, women, particularly, I can only really speak for women, we're not assigned progressively more complicated work. So you can do your 5-year apprenticeship and not actually get the experience you need to be journey level and successful. And we're set up for failure. There's a level that I'm not sure how we get into accountability as an owner or setting up these projects, but they really create systems where, let's be real, when there are layoffs, women and minorities are the first to go. It's a good old boy network. It still is. There is a need. I think the economic stability is a really serious issue. I think we haven't really grappled. Most of the women, including myself, I was a single parent while working in the construction industry. And, it is not structured in a way that you will go weeks and months without work. Yes, you can get unemployment depending on the circumstances, but I think we got to dig a little deeper in our next workforce equity agreements around what are the structures that are causing retention issues. How do you address culture if leadership is not representative? We also tend to do a pretty good job of having women and minority-owned subcontractors, but we do not do anything to help general contractors be women and minority-owned. So I just throw that out there, having spent, a chunk of my career doing this work, that, accountability and changing the culture is going to need to go deeper. I think we've done great work on the apprenticeship level and their recruitment level, really, really excellent. But the level of conversation we need to have about things like schedule, childcare, supervision, making sure that everyone has.
Commissioner Moyer, I think we lost your mic, your audio. Commissioner Moyer? Okay. Unfortunately, we're having some technical difficulties. If she comes back on and has more questions, we'll make sure that we get those to you. But I just want to thank all of you for your work in this. It's appreciate you taking the time to be here today, but also for the work that you're doing within our community in partnership with Multnomah County, in partnership to so many others on this issue. Like, I think that, and I want to thank Commissioner Singleton. She unfortunately had to step away since we're afternoon, but just this work is really important. We know that as we're talking about economic empowerment, economic development, economic opportunity, we have to be creating the places where people feel welcome to work, feel comfortable, feel supported, and have the tools and the resources that they need in order to do that, and that we're doing our part to educate and inform and change what's currently happening to make sure that's happening. And I also feel grateful that we have a lot of folks with very much lived experience in these industries, in these trades. Jenna, I see you there, and just appreciate that we're also able to bring that. So thank you all very much. Again, I want to thank all of the offices for their work and the staff for the work on this on this issue. I think it's been a great discussion today. That concludes our agenda for today. I do want to note that today is Transgender Day of Visibility, and so we have our flags out today. We will be noticing this in a proclamation tomorrow during our regular proclamation ceremony, but today is the Trans Day of Visibility, so I wanted to make sure that we were able to take note of that here at Multnomah County. That concludes today's meeting. Our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, April 2nd, 2026 at 9:30 a.m. We will have our proclamation signing ceremony tomorrow, Wednesday, here in the boardroom at noon, and we invite people to join us for that, either online or in person. There being no further business, we are adjourned.